Hey, what is up everybody, Blades for here, and today I for you guys another video of Persona 5X. Besides today's video, guys, we're going to be going ahead and doing a little bit of a team builder guide here, pretty much telling you guys exactly how teams work and how you're normally going to be formatting, at least formatting these type of teams. So if you guys are interested in this, be sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out quite a lot here. Y'all have been going insane, and I'm just going to continue producing as much content as I possibly can. Make sure a lot of you guys for JP and Global are ready. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So team building is going to be a huge factor inside of this game, and is really going to be one of those things that you can have as much fun with it as possible. Now, inside of this game as well, for my people who really just want to use anyone, you fairly can do so. You can use anyone you really want to use and do well in majority of the content. The only time where you're going to really hit a bar or hit a little bit of a wall is when you're doing like SOS, which is the ranking game mode in this game, and Guild Boss. Guild Boss, technically, if you have a strong enough person that's helping you out, which you can borrow units, you can just straight up just steamroll it as well. So technically you don't have to have a official team for that as well. So you can see how this game is very flexible. Though for a lot of people who want to try and optimize their accounts and optimize things that they're going to be doing, there are some official team balancing that you want to go ahead and do. So we're going to try and break this down, and I'm also going to explain a little bit with Wonder and how he works inside the team, seeing that he is a staple in the team. No matter what, you cannot remove him. So you will always have him, one Navi, and then 3 other units. That's just usually how that's going to go. So let's go ahead and take a look at it real quick. So going ahead and opening the team menu, which is that little function right there, you're always going to have your team somewhat set up like this. Now I'm going to utilize this as an example, and we're just going to have our team looking blank. So for a lot of people who wanted to go ahead and build Makoto, I can use this as a good example for our current people right now on CWKR. And I guess this can be a decent, what's it called, example for those who, I guess, let's just do MY, because they're not letting us name it Makoto for some reason. But let's go ahead and just do MY. And for you people who really want to build Makoto, there's different ways of course, utilizing a team. Normally you want to have, of course, Wonder, who's going to be a flexible spot where he's either a buffer, debuffer, or just a DPSer, which is rare, but usually a buffer, debuffer, or defender are the 3 that you go for. What this is dedicated off is going to be your first persona. So for whatever your first persona is, that's usually going to dedicate what his initial role will be. So for example, we have this one right here, which is more of a debuffer role. If we go ahead and put that on, you will have the debuffer symbol. The same actually goes ahead and applies, or at least applies, when you go ahead and put this here. We put a attacker in here, for example, and put them as the first person. I think if I save it like this, he will now be an attacker. And the same will go if you go ahead and put him as a support unit, aka a healer, or even an AoE DPSer. This honestly goes off of that. With his personas, of course, whatever is the first persona in line, it will take those stats primarily. Main reason why I'm saying this is because if you go ahead and take a look at it here, it is going to be based on their speed stats. For example, I have what is it called, Speedmaster on here that gives me 15% more speed, or 15 additional speed. You will only get this on Wonder inside of a team build if you do have this persona as the first persona. So for example, I have 115 speed. The 15 extra is because of Alice. If I went ahead and took off Alice here, it actually would make it a little bit different. So if we just put on someone else, and let's use this for a good example as well. Put on someone else, and we recheck his stats will reflect this as well, seeing that now we no longer have that 15 speed and we're at a base of 100, which is Wonder's normal amount. This can of course fluctuate depending on persona passives and things of this nature, so you will need to optimize your personas as well depending on the team that you're utilizing. But once again, if we're going to try and at least prepare for at least Makoto, we want to use this one as a DPS thing here, mainly because it helps out the fire side and gives increase of attack for our man Makoto. So let's go ahead and toss this in. He's going to be at least dedicated as an attacker, but really, he's really going to be a support, you guys. Don't worry. But let's go ahead and use our man Makoto as the actual example. So you're always going to have a DPS. The main DPS of this team is Makoto himself, with of course Wonder being a little bit of a supporter, because we're going to cycle through most of his personas. So I would really need like crit rate persona being Dionysus, and then in overall Flux persona, which is going to usually be Yanosek, which is the one that you guys are going to be using. That's just going to be how it is. Wonder is never going to be an actual DPS, so surely do keep that in mind. The daggers also will represent this as well inside of a team, so depending on the team that you're going to be running, you're going to be changing up his daggers accordingly, which I will have a video on that later on as well. But so we have our main character there. We also have Wonder here. How would we dedicate our next 2 slots? Well, initially, when it comes down to team building, you're always going to have either a supporter in the team and or a debuffer in the team. With this in mind, you're gonna usually swap back and forth with these two, and that's gonna be your main bread and butter. But there are some other teams that will require just double support and or the little bit weird ones, which is really rare to see, double debuffer. Now, debuffer is so rare that you don't really see, so we're not gonna go over that one too much. I'm mainly gonna focus on a support team with an attacker, a support, and a debuffer. And then we're gonna focus on a double support team. So let's go ahead and give you guys a little bit of insight of how this really does look. So for example, with our man Makoto, we already know Makoto is gonna need himself a buffer and a debuffer. So we would have something like this, where we have an amazing crit damage buffer. Seeing crit damage is what Makoto really does need. The more crit damage, the better it will be here. So he is able to get off a ton of that good old damage that he does need. As for a debuffer, we do have multiple go ahead and choosing multiple choices, but the one choice that we want to go for is the one that is a fire choice, seeing that he is a fire DPS and needs to synergize with those fire related characters. He also of course does at least want that single target type of debuff here, and Howler is the best fit for this, seeing that she's able to do AoE debuffs and single target debuffs, but she is the strongest single target debuffer when it does come down to at least Makoto himself. Now we have our supporter, we have our main DPS, and oops, I accidentally did that. We have our Wonder, we have our main DPS, our actual debuffer, and our supporter. As for the Navi, this is where things get a little bit complicated, because Navis are very different in offensiveness. The thing with at least Makoto is most of his crit rate you're really going to be using to just get from his weapon and or his regular substats. So characters like Futaba wouldn't really be the most optimal when it does come down to his whole kit. In fact, you instead of using Futaba, who is an offensive navigator, you want to go ahead and go for something else that's offensive. The other 3 offensive navigators are going to be Anj, which is his best in slot, seeing that she also helps out with damage dealt, the other widely just amount of pin, which is what really Makoto truly does need in his kit. So this would be your primary best in slot. But other ones that you could possibly use inside of different team builds could possibly be the girl Phoebe, who actually helps you out a lot with just overall base stats such as HP, attack, and defense, alongside of this damage dealt and the optional, or at least the optional case of using her skill 3 with a certain chalice makes it so you deal elemental damage even more so. So for example, with this team, you can deal more fire damage if you went ahead and use Phoebe, making her another at least slot option. She also has an offensive DPS Navi as well, so you can very well use her. And then our last offensive DPS Navi is going to be Rico. Though the only issue with using Rico is you cannot have multiple of the same character in a team. So if we went ahead and did this, it would get rid of our actual supporter, so we would need to actually replace said supporter with someone else, in which we would use a different support role, being at least our man Luce, who is actually really helpful when it does come down to supporting our man Makoto, seeing he actually offers crit damage, damage dealt, attack, and pin related substats. So this actually is really good to use in terms of another supporter. So once again, you're gonna have Wonder, which is a flex role. You're gonna have Makoto, who's always the main DPS. Then you're gonna have a debuffer and a supporter. This is usually just the way it will always be, and this is kind of like your normal team formation. Now, as I did say, there's other team formations that do work as well, such as a just regular flex role, a DPS, and 2 supporters. A good example of this, if we're going ahead and utilizing our man Makoto as a good example for this, it would more likely be a team that looks like this. So on the off chance that you don't have Leon, you would go ahead and use on the off chance that you don't have Leon, you would use Rico. But if you don't have Rico, which is a 5-star 5-star attacker, you would go ahead and use Leon, which is a 4-star supporter, or 5-star supporter as well, sorry. But Leon himself is a 4-star supporter. Now we have 2 supports in this team. Though Luce isn't your only option. You very well do need Pin as well, so being that you need another supporter, you could use Turbo, which is a good example of the flex, DPS, support, and offensive Navi. This is a good example of another optional type of team formation that you guys can use instead of the flex, DPS, debuffer, supporter, offensive Navi. So those are your main 2 examples. Once again, depending on the team that you have in hand, you will change your offensive Navi accordingly, whether it's either using Ange for the extra pin, in which if you have this extra pin with Ange, there's no real need for Turbo, so you would go ahead and change this to more of a debuffer. At this point in time, it could be anyone you want, but if you aren't using Ange and you're just using Phoebe, this is the perfect little example of a good team. Though if we're using Rico and we already have a little bit more of damage dealt type deal, we would change this team accordingly. But once again, it would either be in the formation of flex, attack, debuffer, supporter, and flex, attack, supporter. Either way, it's going to be one of those 2. Those are mainly just the official ways of doing those teams, but of course, you can mix up the teams accordingly. I do it all the time for some of my teams as well, where I don't really abide by all the time the same type of little role here. For example, we have characters that do need sub DPSs. One of these examples is pretty much Akechi. Akechi himself can be used in multiple teams, and I had him inside of at least the Blessed team, seeing one of his skills does help out Blessed characters. Maybe a little bit less helpful than him being in a different team or being on a stronger DPS side, but still it can work. You would usually have an attacker, have a sub DPS attacker, and then you would have mainly like a healer, right? This is more of a healer type of deal, and the main reason for me using something weird like this is because she actually scales off my HP. So if I can go ahead and have my HP topped off at all times, Motaha, who actually scales off of HP, will be very, very powerful. So there are points in times where the formation does change, but it's kind of rare in between. So you really have to kind of, you know, figure that out on, at least on the back end, when it does come down to actually utilizing said character. But before we go ahead and wrap up the video, there's one more thing I wanted to discuss with you guys, because I know some of you guys don't notice it, or maybe you do notice it and you're still wondering exactly what this means. If you go ahead and take a look at the top of my screen here, you can see that there is 1, 2, 4, and 3. Now what this means is more of a speed tuning. There is a speed tuning type of deal inside of this game that goes off of team formation. Certain characters will have higher speed, certain characters will have lower speed, and you will need to tune accordingly. When it does come down to this, usually your DPS is always going to want to go last, because you want to make sure your buffers, your debuffers, and even your flex buffer or debuffer needs to go before them. It's in order to allow them to actually deal as much damage as possible once everything is assorted and actually debuffed or buffed for the character. So that's one of the last tips I can really give you when it does come to team formation. So if you really want the speed tune, that's going to be more of a different video going over with artifacts that I will be covering as well. And that's going to be very interesting, especially if you're really into at least Guild Boss and SOS. But till then, you guys, hopefully I was able to clear up a little bit of just cloudy judgment on the team formation type of deals. If so, be sure to let me know down below and just let me know what you want to see as well. But till then, everybody, thank y'all for watching and peace out.